Good day, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. The webinar is Delivering Customer Value and Boosting Retention in Financial Services. And this webinar is obviously co-hosted by Microsoft and inQuba. My name is Antony, and I'm going to be your host and your admin for today. Before I introduce our speakers, perhaps just a little bit of context on the content that we're going to be talking about today and what you can expect. So businesses, especially in financial services, are asking the question, how do we ensure delivery of value to our customers in order to ensure the long-term value of our customers? Because what we've seen is that value itself is actually a layered construct, and we're looking forward to discussing the most effective and profitable approaches to making sure that value is delivered. I'd like to introduce our speakers. First of all, we are thrilled to have Vlad Daljac from Microsoft Australia with us today. Fantastic to have you here, Vlad. Do you want to introduce yourself quick?
Thank you, Anthony. It's Vlad here, as Anthony said. I look after partner sales for financial services in Australia. And what that means is I understand the customer's challenges and opportunities within financial services. And I look across our partner ecosystem in order to leverage the right partners to solve those challenges or help our customers attain those opportunities.
Brilliant. Thanks, Vlad. And again, thanks for being here. Trent Rossini, the Managing Director of inQuba. Trent?
Good morning. Thank you for the time this afternoon. Great to have an opportunity to be together with Microsoft. We're really excited about what we're seeing in the journey space. This past year has been challenging for everybody, and so many organizations have had this rapid fast forward in terms of the digital space. And what we're seeing is that much as infrastructure has been built at a rapid pace, there hasn't been an equal consideration in terms of delivering value for customers. So we're really excited this morning to be able to share with you what we're seeing in terms of managing customer value, leveraging all of that digital infrastructure that has been built up over the last while.
Great, thanks, Trent. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Vlad, I'm going to hand over to you for the first couple of slides.
Sure, great. Thank you, Anthony. I did want to talk a little bit about our partnership with inQuba and some of the work that we're doing. So I think it's important to note that our partnership with inQuba is a strategic partnership. We are looking at how we can co-invest, not just in go-to-market, but across our engineering teams as well. And when you kind of think about Azure is really a platform, and it's a horizontal platform. And we have partners like inQuba that really deliver vertical benefits to our customers on that platform that are very industry specific. And I think as a result of that partnership, we are really thinking about how we jointly go after the customer experience within financial services. And specifically some of the things that we're seeing as important to our customers from a Microsoft perspective, we're looking at where we can actually work with inQuba to deliver outcomes for those customers. And what I mean by that is when you think about customer experience can happen on a number of channels. It can happen digitally, or it can happen within the branch as a customer goes in the branch. And I think what is important, and we are trying to work with inQuba, is how do we gather all of the insights across where the customers prefer to engage with us, and how do we use those insights in order to make better decisions on the offers, the products, as well as the experience that we offer back to our customers. And that could mean that the customer engages us through a telemarketing channel, like a call center experience. That customer could be having a challenge with their loan or their repayments, and inQuba and us working together can hopefully pick that up, ingest that data, and understand that we might actually have to go back and proactively loan a discount to that customer, for example. So there's definitely areas that we're thinking about how we partner together, but the partnership is deep because we are co-investing in go-to-market. We're thinking about how the platform works on the Azure solution, and that's where I think the real benefit comes to our customers. I think at Microsoft, we've long thought about how we take the various intersection points that we have with customers, gathering all of the insights, and really looking at how we can define when it is the right time to engage that customer. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of different ways to gauge the customer's intent as well as the customer's needs. So if a customer comes to one of our events, or if a customer reads one of our white papers, or if the customer engages with a trial of one of our products, I think historically we really thought about that from a rule-based scoring perspective and how we can actually think about what is the right way to engage the customer when they scored a certain a number of engagement points. But I think more and more we're thinking about how we transform that to some form of artificial intelligence or something more meaningful, where we know that each customer interaction isn't worth the same score. So if Anthony or Trent, for example, come to an event, that could be more valuable than if I come to an event because of where I am in my life. And then I could be a university student, while there could be professionals that are really looking for a solution to help their business move forward. So when I talk about customer insights, I'm going to talk about ingesting those insights and really thinking about them holistically. I think about it from that perspective, and that is, what do we kind of do next with that? And to me, that's where artificial intelligence really unlocks what you can do with that insight. But I think that's just one part of the journey, deciding when to engage the customer. I think the next part of the journey that's important is understanding how much of a touch you need with the customer. And what I mean by that is, do you have to send that customer to a direct sales engagement? Or should we send that customer to be engaged by one of our partners because the requirements are a lot deeper than what we can solve perhaps over the phone through our scale engagement engines? Or does that customer even need a touch point? Should we continue to serve them up with relevant content that can help them through that journey, which is more of a digital type engagement? That could be email, or that could be kind of banners within products that really help them along their journey and understanding of the product. But ultimately, I think what you're trying to drive towards, and that's what inQuba will be trying to drive towards as well, and Antony and Trent will talk a little bit about this, is client satisfaction and really making that journey from product discovery to product usage very easy. But as well as ongoing loyalty, I think one thing that is clear is, one, customers are making a lot more of their purchasing decisions earlier in the cycle, so it's important to have a strong customer experience and digital engine. But two, it's always more expensive to acquire a new customer versus retaining an existing customer. So the more data driven you can be, and the better that you can make decisions on when to engage a customer or the type of user experience that you provide for your customer is absolutely key. And I think that's where what we've done historically as Microsoft, but as well as where inQuba is trying to play, really makes this a unique partnership.
That's great. Thank you very much, Vlad. We're going to talk more about these things in a bit. I just want to give everyone a bit of a view of what's coming up in the rest of the presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about customer value and how customer value is a multi-dimensional construct. We are going to propose a solution to ensuring that those layers of value are delivered. We're going to see what the analysts say about this, because obviously that's important. And we're going to show you a video, which is basically going to sum everything up in about 2 minutes. At this point, I am going to hand over the controls to Trent.
Thanks, Anthony, and Vlad for the introduction this morning. We certainly are very excited about the space and the difference that we see that we're making to corporates that we're working with across the market. I think Antony and Vlad have done a superb job in terms of positioning the challenges that exist in the market and the opportunities. I guess it's my role within the session this morning to really share with you some of the details of exactly how that gets executed. Value is such an important concept, and it's certainly a concept that gets thrown around and gets used a lot, but I think it's important to actually drill down. So Anthony's already made a reference of the importance of the value of customers, and every corporate organization that has a large number of customers is acutely aware that customers bring value to that organization and drives profitability. But really, to get that right, what you need to do is you need to deliver value for those same customers. no customer will be interacting with an organization if they're not getting value over a period of time. And if you get that right, ultimately what that does is it drives market share, it drives profitability. There's a lot that's changed recently, and I mentioned a little bit early on that we've seen a fast forward in terms of what's happened in the COVID space. So if you think about today's consumer, a lot has changed. Customers are saying that they are certainly more digital. They're a lot more empowered because of that digital nature. We're seeing people really caring about well-being, and in fact, there's been a massive explosion in certain sectors, wellness sectors. I know specifically in the area of cycling, and there's been a massive explosion in demand on bicycle components. At the same time, simplicity is becoming quite important. The complex world in which we live is sometimes overwhelming, and we're seeing at the same time a strong move towards a self-sustaining point of view. Many brands are leveraging off this, and customers are exploring options, and they, particularly in this world where you feel that you're stuck at home and you need to make sure that you manage your life and you reduce risk. I think there are some things that have stayed consistent over time. So customers still want hope. They want relevant engagement. In fact, I'd argue that they probably want more engagement today than they've had in a long time because of the fact that many people are sitting at home and working remotely. They want real, authentic experiences, and those moments where they do interact have to feel really special. And all of this translates into one or another form of value. So when we start to think about the concept of value, I think the traditional thinking about this is really, it's what the customer gets for what the customer pays. And that's a relatively simplistic view. However, if you start to break it down and consider the different dimensions, there are actually multiple elements to value. There's the economic, that's really the dollar and cents. There's the functional elements, the experiential, and the symbolic. So let's explore each one of these in a little bit more depth. Now, as you're going through and you're interacting with an organization, be it a financial services organization, be it a telco, and as you're going through the acquisition process, you're thinking about staying or leaving, you have the potential to buy more products. On a continuous basis, customers are really worrying about, are they getting value in the equation? And dependent on whether they are or not perceiving value delivery to them, it's really delivery of value to the customer. That will result in either that they leave that organization, or they stay, or they buy more. So there's this inextricable link between customer value and certainly the value delivered to customers and the outcomes that happen for that particular organization. And the model that has been developed by Forrester is very powerful in being able to quantify and give real substance to this whole notion of value delivery. And we're going to talk a lot more about that as we progress through the session today. So the question then is, how do we make sure that we deliver value to customers in order to reap the rewards of the value of customers? And one of the things that obviously we're very focused on and very passionate about is the whole use of customer journey management, and realizing that value is delivered across the customer journey. And what we've seen actually is, if you actively manage the journey and you actively manage value delivery to the customer, we can get 100% improvement in terms of acquisition, retention, and conversion. And that's a very, very exciting outcome for organizations that in this very competitive age, where everyone is digital, where everyone's online, that those increments along the way really are fundamental in terms of driving bottom line outcomes by just focusing and really being customer centric around this whole notion of value delivery to the customer. So the inQuba approach really leverages off a lot of the components that Vlad spoke about from an Azure point of view. We're seeing that data is exploding, and that data can be used to actually understand customer journeys, and probably as importantly, we can understand the perception of customers as they navigate. We can drill into the data. We can use analytics We can organize the data to get deep insights, and then we can plan interventions and we can optimize those. And here we have this unique opportunity to use all of that big data in combination with machine learning to really drive great outcomes. And we've done this at a number of organizations and seen really significant and positive outcomes, both in terms of driving what we call action outcomes. So for instance, the conversion of a lead to a customer, or alternatively based on value outcomes. And one of the metrics associated with that is the perception of the brand, and that's reflected through Net Promoter Score. We've been at this for quite some time, and right back from 2018, we are fortunate to appear in the Gartner assessments, and it was the early stage of customer journey management and customer value delivery. And even at that stage, we were rated as one of the top vendors in terms of customer journeys, coupled with our professional services, our reporting and analytics, and automated action, which, by the way, has come a significant way since this original report was published. Fast forward that position from 2018 to today. More recently, a report that's come out from Quadrant, a research organization, recognized the leading position from inQuba as we grow into the market. And then most recently, again, Gartner's recognized the work that we're doing. So we are very grateful for the recognition that we're getting in terms of the work that we're doing in the journey space. And this really comes from all of the investment that we've done in the inQuba Journey Cloud. So the platform is a fairly significant one. It has a number of different focuses, all integrated into a single platform. We start on the left in terms of the customer experience elements. So this is really the ability to interact with customers, to collect insights, to react to those insights, and then to present those insights through a variety of different analytics tools. We've added to that our social media components, which allow us to listen into social media channels and then to react to those insights and deal with unstructured text. Unstructured text enabled through machine learning is a very vital component of understanding the customer journey and value delivery. And then our very journey analytics focused components, which allow us to map the journey, to engage, to use data to represent the journey, and then to drive optimizations and understand how value is delivered, ultimately driving towards ROI and making sure that all of the investments that we make in these technologies actually translate. And all of this is obviously enabled through a strong data capability and making use of Azure machine learning to actually make sure that the recommendations are coherent with where the customer is at different parts of the journey. The platform itself is underpinned by a very strong foundation. So we make sure that we deal with aspects such as security. It's absolutely vital, particularly when you're dealing with personal information, making sure that we can deal with scale, making sure that obviously we can pull together data in a single view, we can do data import, export, and then quite a big focus in terms of data collection and also interaction with a variety of different channels. And we very much are an omni-channel solution, interacting and ingesting data from a large number of channels, and then having the ability to nudge through an equally large number of channels. The technology itself is certainly very Microsoft-centric. We are very proud to be a Microsoft Gold partner. We are referred to as an IP co-sell, which really means that inQuba brings its own intellectual property to the fore, and that allows us to work together with Microsoft, bringing our unique capabilities together with the very strong inherent capabilities of the Azure cloud, which obviously we host in a variety of different countries for the needs of those particular countries. So that hopefully gives you an element of context of how we are positioned and what we do. And it's probably a good time to move on to a little bit more of the detail of how exactly we go about optimizing value through customer journeys. So I've already touched on the value model, but I want to drill down a little bit more into the detail. And we really start off with the economic dimension. And this is really, it's either the dollars that you spend or the dollars that that you save. So when you're thinking of, let's think of a short-term insurance product, you're obviously very cognizant of how much you're paying as a premium, but you're equally cognizant of what are your deductibles along the way, how much you're going to get paid out, and are there additional costs. For instance, if you're going to have an accident, car hire might be an aspect that you might consider. Then the next key part of the value model is really the functional element. So how does the policy work? Will you have to find the repair shop yourself? Will you be supported in that? Will you be provided additional elements such as, for instance, roadside assist, or alternatively car hire capabilities? Then we really move on to the symbolic element, and inherent in this is really the brand, and branding is really important. Think of an insurance product. You are paying money today based on the trust that at some point in the future, should an incident arise, that you're actually going to be refunded for that particular claim. And the whole brand associated with that then interaction is really important at a slightly different level in other domains. Let's think of, for instance, credit cards. There's a lot of value associated with the different tiers. So, you know, are you on a simple entry-level credit card, or are you on a really high-end platinum card? You know, and people make a lot of decisions about the status associated with those different products. And then the last component is really the experiential one. So how much effort is going to be involved? How much support am I going to get across different channels? Is this going to be easy? Is it going to be elegant? Is it going to be a large amount of effort on my part? So these four dimensions of value: economic, functional, symbolic, and experiential, are really four dimensions that we use throughout the customer journey, and we really measure them at different points. So they're not measured at a point in time, but rather as a continuum through the customer journey. So what is this whole notion of customer journey management? And just looking across the industry, here's an explanation I think makes a lot of sense, that journey management enables you not only to measure, monitor, and optimize customer experience, but align your organization to your customer goals. And we're going to talk a lot about customer goals, because at the end of the day, the corporate that is delivering services to the end customer needs to be cognizant of those goals and make sure that they are in fact delivering value. And it's really around making sure that you understand the journeys that matter to your organization, measuring both the hard metrics, i.e. what customers are doing, as well as the softer metrics, their emotion and their perception of value, tracking, and then prioritizing. Very interesting feedback that we've got from McKinsey & Company, and they've done a lot of research in this space. And what's really interesting from their perspective is that more than 50% of customer interactions happen as multi-event, multi-channel journeys. That really means that touch points by themselves, although they're important, the journeys matter more, in fact, than the touch points. And they've proven conclusively that a journey-led, as opposed to obviously a touchpoint-led approach, is 30% more positively correlated with CSAT and business outcomes. So the bottom line is you have to understand and think about the customer journey from an end-to-end point of view, rather than just worrying about a particular point in time. A particular point in time is, for instance, an interaction with a call center or a singular interaction with the website. You need to look at the combination and interaction between those. So let's just make this a little bit practical and think of an example. A lot of organizations have obviously been thinking about their digital journeys, and the design inevitably is one that is well thought out. So let's think of somebody going through an application for a financial product. They go from application to accepting the quote, to documentation, to activation. And it's a simple and seamless process, and always that is the intent. However, we all know that much as we sit with hats on that design the delivery of customer journeys like this, if you actually teleport yourself into a position of being a customer of an organization, it might look a little bit more along these lines, which is the application starts off in a branch, I then go online, I get the quote, I speak to an agent, I go back to the branch, I speak to the agent a second time, I send in an email, I get frustrated, I go into social media, and then I speak to an agent, and it actually turns out in this particular case that this particular customer actually doesn't even get to the activation stage. So these are the harsh realities of what's happening in the real world, and all of a sudden that perfectly designed customer experience delivered across the customer journey unfortunately doesn't become a reality. And we actually need a mechanism, and we need a technology, and we need a methodology to be able to deal with the situation. So we're going to focus on today a situation of a short-term insurance scenario, and we're going to think about the onboarding journey. So you've all received one of those promotions. The promotion might be in the form of a direct emailer. It might be a TV advert. More likely these days, it's probably some online promotion through one of your favorite news sites. Next thing is that you're getting a quote, and then you're going through the options, and there's a little bit backwards and forwardsing on that. You eventually make a decision, you submit your application online, and you receive your welcome pack. Now, there are certain outcomes that, as a corporate, you want the end customer to do. So, obviously, you want them to respond to the promotion by navigating to the call center or the contact center. You want them to be requesting a quote, providing information, probably using the default options. Then you more than likely want the customer to consider different options as they refine their monthly premium. And once they're happy and they make the decision, they need to submit their applications and their documents. And ultimately, they need to start engage as the policy goes live. And as we've been talking extensively during the course of today's session, there are certain value points that happen during the course of the customer journey. So up front, in the response to a promotion, there has to be interest in the brand and the value proposition at the highest level, and that's where marketing and messaging comes into play. As you progress to the quoting stage, you need to understand the economic value and the functional needs. You really want the customer to be absorbed in that. You want them to then select options. You want them to understand those options and the pros and cons of each option. And then you really want them, from an experiential point of view, you want them to go through the process of submitting the application, having a very seamless process. And lastly, you want to really reinforce value, because it's going to start to drive towards advocacy and loyalty through a series of informed value-enhancing communications. Really, where the inQuba platform comes into play is it gives a variety of different tools at different points within the journey to be able to actually change the perception of value delivery. And what we do is that we have a variety of tools to actually have dialogues with customers, understand the value delivery. And as we start to understand that, we also then start to set goals. And those goals are twofold. They're both in terms of action outcomes as well as goals in terms of value delivery, which we measure through using a variety of interactive dialogues from customers. We'll show you a working example of that a little bit later on. So let's talk a little bit about goals. As I mentioned briefly, goals can take two forms: the action goals, and that's really where a customer has achieved a particular task, and their value goals. That's their perception of the value that you are delivering to them as either as a telco or as a short-term insurance provider, or alternatively as a bank providing a transactional product. And as we set and define these action goals and these value goals, those are used across the whole continuum as we understand what the customer journey is through data. We measure value delivery through having insights collection. We use then this combination and interplay between the actions and the customer insights to drive interventions, and ultimately we measure and refine the results by using a series of interventions that actually drive the objective of making sure that value is fully perceived by the customer and results in the kinds of outcomes that we want, and ultimately that the customer meets their goals, which in turn leads to the business outcomes that you as corporate providers of services are aiming to provide to the end customer. So to enable this, inQuba has put together a methodology, we call it the 5-step process, of thinking about how journeys play out and how we use data to collect insights, and how we drive and optimize outcomes. So let's talk through the inQuba 5-step process. We discover real journeys using data. We measure value delivery by interacting with the customer and collecting feedback. We then analyze the interplay between what people are doing and how they're feeling to determine whether they in fact are achieving their goals at the different points. And then we design a series of intervention strategies, and then we review and optimize this over a period of time. And obviously this is done on a rinse and repeat basis so that we can optimize the value delivery and we can achieve those outcomes supporting the kinds of business results that you as an organization would like to have. Let's start off by looking at the discovery of real journeys. And one of the key capabilities of the inQuba platform is this ability to actually bring data into the platform. We ingest data from a wide variety of different sources, either on a batch basis or on a real-time basis, and we understand the journeys. Then we can look at how the journeys play out, and we can set different goals, as I said, action goals and value goals at different points in the journey. And we pull all of this together in terms of a single view of the customer that unifies the journeys for different customers. And ultimately, we overlay that with a lifetime value view of the customer to understand how value is either being delivered and realized across the customer journey, alternatively is actually exiting from the organization at points such as declines or terminations. All of this is enabled within the inQuba product itself, and the representation of journeys is data driven, so this isn't drawn based on a theoretical view. It is really using the big data capabilities that are part and parcel of the Azure stack, be able to ingest that data, visualize the data, and then add an additional layer of understanding through aspects of overlaying customer lifetime value. We're also able to interact with the customer journey and set goals at different points within the customer journey. And as I said earlier, those goals can take two forms. They can either be a score related to value delivery across the 4 dimensions of the value model, or alternatively, they can be focused on action outcomes. For instance, the fact that the customer, for instance, is going to do a renewal, or that they are actually going to buy a particular product.
Thanks, Trent. I actually want to just jump in here and ask Vlad. Vlad, I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts, perhaps some of your experience specifically in the area of data ingestion in order to discover customers' journeys.
Great. Well, first of all, I have to say what you and the team trying to do it's very unique, and I think shows a high level of empathy, because you deeply listen and you try to understand the customers, which is great to see. I think from an ingestion perspective, one of the things that I'm seeing specifically in financial services, and I alluded to this before as well in the introduction, is that there are many channels from which data is coming from. Trent was talking about call centers early on. So call centers are one channel the data is coming from. Data can also come from in person with people visiting the branch. Data can also come from interactions of marketing materials and other materials that you might receive through email, through text, and so on. So I think one of the things that I'm seeing more and more is how do you get all of those different avenues of data? How do you ingest them? And then how do you really start to make sense of them in a way where you can start to define what that customer journey is, but then where the right intersection points to actually engage that customer? Or how do you automate, better yet, once you find those right intersection points on what you actually need to serve up to the customer? So I think that's what I'm seeing. Banks, superannuation companies, wealth management companies are really starting to think about all the different avenues that they might get data from, how they ingest that data to make sense of it in one data warehouse, and then from there, when is it the right time to reach out to the customer, and then what is the right thing to say to the customer? So that's kind of how I'm seeing it play out from our side.
Great, thanks, Vlad.
Yeah, I think, Vlad, you make a very valuable point, and what we're seeing in the evolution of technology and again, the capabilities that are inherent in the Azure platform are making a lot of this data management and ingestion a lot easier than it certainly used to be. As we're getting integration services being hosted in the cloud, some challenges that were simply impossible just 2 or 3 years ago are now being very effectively enabled and making this reality far more feasible today as we ingest. So once we've been past the first step in the process, which is discovering real journeys and dealing with the ingestion of the data, which certainly in the inQuba context, we developed a large number of very effective tools to make that a lot easier than certainly, as I said, would have been the case a number of years ago. Next thing we really want to do is we want to move on to actually measuring the value delivery in the context of what customers are doing. And we really do this by having a series of omni-channel interactions, and we can take both structured and unstructured text within the platform and apply text analytics. And we have a meta model that allows us to actually understand value delivery. We can have ratings, as I say, we can deal with unstructured text, and we can analyze that and understand how that plays out at different points within the customer journey. So that really takes us to the point that we've now brought together and fused transactional data with a perception of the customer. Often what we're also doing is we're collecting context, and that puts us in a position then to actually start to analyze whether we are in fact achieving the goals for customers at different points within the customer journey. So those goals, just to reiterate again, are action outcome orientated, and that's getting to a certain point. It might be the settlement of a claim, it might be the renewal of a short-term policy, it might be the reinvestment of a superannuation. Those goals, those action outcomes, are really a function of whether value has been delivered to the customer. And it really is incredibly valuable to collect insights and overlay a perception of value delivery and start to understand how what you're doing as a corporate provider, as I say, whether you're a wealth management company, whether you are a short-term insurer, or for that matter, you're a telco, is that you really are using insights to understand how customers are feeling about your particular brand. You're also identifying key points along the customer journey where potentially customers are exiting and getting to the root cause of what's actually happening and driving that particular outcome. So what we're able to do is we set goals at different points of the journey, and then we start to understand how different segments are reacting at different points in the journey. And this is often where some fascinating insights start to arise. You start to see which customers are achieving their goals, which ones are not, and what is the profile of customers at different points. And often this is where you have to start refining your value delivery to the customer, potentially start to change the way you deliver the customer experience, potentially start to change the product. And we can start to look at all of this in the context of the customer journey. We can look at customers that are highly satisfied, potentially customers that are not. And that really allows us to start then to really understand this whole interplay between the value model and the customer journey. So that really progresses us to the point of understanding this whole interplay in terms of what customers are doing and how we're delivering value to them. And that is a good segue onto step 4, which is where we start to do something about the insights. And this is really where we start to convert insights into action and start to design the intervention strategies. So the intervention strategies are really the things that we do as an organization to move customers forward. And that can take a number of different forms. It could be potentially digital nudges. It literally, hey, Vlad, you've got to submit your application, or we're waiting for outstanding proof of banking details. It might be a value communication. Don't forget that Transatlantic Insurance will offer your first month free. It might be a more fundamental and systemic change. That could be a product change. It could be potentially a change in the way that you present your options in the quoting. And in certain instances, it might actually involve an individual getting from your organization, getting involved and engaging with the end customer. And inherent in our solution is the ability to deal with closed loop recovery, either within the inQuba platform itself, or very often, as is the case, we'll actually direct that escalation into your chosen CRM platform, such as Microsoft Dynamics. And what we're able to do is we can really try and experiment at this particular point. So we can personalize those interventions, we can apply rule sets, we can run control groups, and we get a much better sense of different options and how they actually play out for the end customer. We also, this is really where you can start to get the true benefit of AI. It is actually an ideal use case where you can see how different options play out for different customers, and you can start to understand the interplay of the context of the customer and the customer segment with the particular chosen interventions, and start to see how those play out. And then you can start to make a more rule-driven choices, obviously informed by AI, to come up with the optimal solution.
Thanks, Trent. Vlad, you made a few comments just now about interventions, orchestrating. How do we know when to contact customers and how? I'm keen to hear your thoughts at this stage of the process.
Yeah, I really like what Trent was talking about, specifically around some of the analysis and then also the intervention that comes after the analysis. And I know one of our customers was actually doing this manually, and what I mean by that is in their customer journey, they had 2 customer intersection points. The first point is when they actually scored a customer and they thought they were ready to engage the customer, they will send that customer to what we called the telemarketing team. Now, the first touch point in the telemarketing team was a team that would qualify the customer if they're actually ready to buy the product, budget authority, need and time. What would then happen is once they've established that qualification, they will pass it to a second individual, right, who could actually work with the customers to help them finalize the purchase of the product or the service that they're looking for. However, after analysis of the actual customer journey, what our customer realized is that the handoff between those 2 roles, the initial qualification role and then the sales role, could actually take up to 90 days because there was a backlog. Now, this was a manual analysis, and it was just by chance that they found that. So having something that is actually driven by artificial intelligence or driven through automation is absolutely critical, because you can pick up these types of things in the customer journey that could be extending your sales cycle, or alternatively having your end customers go elsewhere because it is actually taking you so long to solve their challenge, right? Now, what I like about the design intervention, that is where you start to think about, hey, well, I've got this insight. What do I now do to solve this? And for that specific customer, what it was for them was actually merging the 2 roles and saying, well, why do we need a qualification role when we could actually have a qualification role and a sales role in one? So when the customer calls us up, they can instantly get what they need sold once we understand that they actually want to actually buy that product or service. So this is where I think what you were talking about, Trent, it's absolutely critical to be able to analyze that in a automated fashion, and I think that's what you and the team offer. But then I think more importantly, it's what. You know, you have that insight, but then what's the design intervention that you're going to put in place to actually solve for the customer journey? So I think that's probably the point of view, Anthony, that I would offer on that one.
That's brilliant, very interesting. Thanks, Vlad.
Really nice to hear, Vlad, that you know, there's such synergy between what we're seeing and what we're doing in terms of our capability and real-world problems that the customers are experiencing. And that really gets us onto the last step in the inQuba methodology, which is to review and optimize. And this is really a case of looking at the different interventions, fine-tuning those at different points, and starting to optimize them to drive towards ROI. So what we have inherent in this capability is obviously the ability to set up control groups, to test different types of interventions, going back to the example that Vlad just shared with us, test those interventions, see how they play out for different groups over a period of time, and then really start to understand how that plays out in terms of increases of overall experience, increases in lifetime value, and how all of that interacts and interplays with value delivery to the end customer. And that very quickly is the inQuba 5-step process of discovering real journeys, measuring value delivery, analyzing goal achievement, designing intervention strategies, and reviewing and optimizing. And it is a methodology that we're getting a significant number of results from, and certainly our customers are very excited about. The last part of what we'd like to cover today is a practical example of this, and I'd like to take you through a case study with a retail bank. Now, the objective of this particular project was to focus on the new business process and to reduce not taken ups and move the customer to the next point. And part and parcel of that is obviously to make use of machine learning to optimize the best possible communication. So let's just start off and consider the landscape. A customer applies for a credit card. Ideally, they accept the quote, then they receive the card, and ultimately they activate and spend. And within each one of those key phases, there are different steps to the customer journey. So potentially the application could be incomplete, the quote pending or declined. And then we go through, or the end customer goes through fulfilling the application, and very often documents are outstanding. You want to get feedback on the sales experience. The card might not be delivered. Very importantly, from an economic point of view, the card then often sits in the wallet and there's no spend against that. And ultimately what you want to do is you want to make sure that you drive towards activation and spend, because it's only at that point that the bank actually starts to realize real benefits. So going back to the 5-step methodology, the approach that we adopted was really to collect insights at different points in the customer journey. We then applied a series of well-orchestrated different interventions using the ABN testing, putting control groups in place, and then optimizing that using machine learning to target the best proposition to different customers. And the results, one that we have seen in more than one scenario of implementation, specifically in the credit card space, is that we got more than 100% increase where the interventions were targeted at customers. So whether it was the movement of the customer from the quote to submission of documents, or whether it was the submission of documents and application to spend, we were able to increase those. I think, as I recall, it was 98% and 102%. So a real material impact in terms of the bottom line for that particular bank where we did this work. So coming back to the example that I showed you earlier on, we spoke about the customer journey in the short-term insurance space. And I just want to run you through a scenario of how we could interact specifically as it relates to understanding how we gain insights around a quote. Let's drill down through the specific detail of a value assessment dialogue. So this is taking the context of a customer that's gone through a promotion and now getting in their quote, and you understand a little bit more of what's happening in that particular world. So it starts off by an initial engagement with the customer. We are going to be talking about a fictitious company called Transatlantic that is really centered around our demo environment. And we start off with a communication that is highly personalized to the customer, and it says, "Hi Lynn, we hope you had that we met your requirements in quoting for your VW or Ford, as the case may be. To help you get the most value from Transatlantic Insurance, we really encourage you to provide feedback on the quote that you've received. Please click on this link so we can help to determine whether you are actually receiving value and whether we're meeting expectations." And we can do a channel swap here. In this particular case, we're going to the WhatsApp channel, which we're seeing a higher degree of prevalence and engagement across multiple channels. So the platform itself then offers up a personalized dialogue and asks Lynn please to provide feedback in terms of the value that is delivered to her. And the first thing we want to know is, what is the most important aspect of you making a decision? Is it the price on the cover? Is it the benefits associated with insurance? Is it the brand? Or is it the application experience? Once that information has been collected, we can now go get on to understanding how we're doing in each area. So we can actually rate the price on the cover, we can rate the benefits, we can rate the brand, we can rate the application experience. We can also use the opportunity to understand context. So is the customer, in this case Lynn, is she doing this quoting on the basis of having a new car? Is it a competitive quote to replace your existing cover? Or is she just shopping around, she's unhappy with the insurer and she's considering options? We also want to understand when this decision is going to be taking place. This is really valuable in understanding the context of the customer so that the subsequent engagements can be highly personalized. So we ask the time frame. And we can also get insight as to whether she wants to speak to a consultant. She might be confused by the quote and she might request that she actually wants to talk to somebody who explains it. And we can also then collect other feedback, specifically in this case, a free text, which we feed into our text analytics engine. Once the individual has completed the dialogue, we can thank her for her feedback that goes into the platform, and we can use that as basis to act at this particular point within the customer journey. So hopefully, between the example that I shared, which is an example of what we've done from an end-to-end point of view in the credit card space, as well as this more detailed example in the short-term insurance space, you can see how the components come together in terms of real-world experience for the end customer.
And Trent, I think that the point of view that I have here is a lot of our customers are trying to solve that challenge of how do they actually reach their end customer. And what I mean by that, there's many channels that the customers are on. Social, that could be iMessages, as you had in the other example, or that could be WhatsApp. And I think what's great about the solution that you have is you actually try to go through those channels in order to reach the customer in a channel that makes the most sense for them, which I think is it's a very unique thing, but it's definitely critical for today's world.
100%, Vlad. It is so true. We all interact with our friends and family across multiple channels, and I think it's fair to say that we have that same expectation of the corporates that we interact with. Why should it be a single channel interaction, and why shouldn't your context be transferred across channels? You sometimes sitting at home working from your laptop. Other times you are traveling around, you're on the metro, or alternatively, at some point in the future, you might be on an aeroplane. Hopefully that time will return for all of us in the near future. What we want to finish off with today is a simple video that pulls these concepts together in a very succinct way. So I think we're cognizant of the fact that we've covered a lot of ground today. There's quite a lot to take on board, and it can potentially be a little bit overwhelming. So what we've done is put together almost a précis version of everything we've spoken about together, and that comes together in a very simple and elegant quick video that we're going to take you through, which hopefully pulls us together. And as you're running through that video, you can reflect on the various themes that we've spoken about today, and it'll make a lot more sense and really bring the story together.
You know the destination you want your customers to reach, but sometimes the actual customer journey is more complex and winding than what was designed. Obstacles and confusing processes can lead to detours, and individual journeys can be difficult to see, especially with the obstacles of millions of customers crowding your view. How will you guide each customer towards their goals? Imagine you could visualize customers' actual journeys, understand their emotions, dynamically clear their paths, and nudge them in the right direction. Now you can optimize journeys for success with inQuba Journey Cloud. Start by discovering customers' actual journeys. Using data from multiple systems, you can easily visualize journeys, map out goals, and spot pitfalls. Then measure customer sentiment and collect their emotional context in real time. Uncover the why behind customer behavior by overlaying their actual journey with their emotional journey. Together with machine learning, use these deep insights to orchestrate journeys through hyper-personalized digital nudges and real-time human interventions. Repeat the process by further optimizing ideal journeys, leading the customers to their goals and boosting conversion. Experience a 100% increase in customer conversion while delivering exceptional customer experiences and maximizing profit. inQuba Journey Cloud provides a single lab environment where you can discover, measure, learn, orchestrate, rapidly experiment, and easily optimize the customer journey like never before. Because when customers reach their goals, you reach your goals too. Imagine knowing your customer's destination and exactly how to get them there safely. Try inQuba today and make what you imagine reality.
Hopefully that has made a lot of sense to you. You know, as we've gone through today, we've really tried to share with you things that we do uniquely from an inQuba point of view. The option that you have is obviously to try and do this through non-purpose-based tools. I think a solution like inQuba really can reduce your dependency on development, can get you up and running very quickly. We can get you to speed of insight very rapidly. We can give complete clarity in terms of where to intervene, and we can test those different scenarios through rapid iteration. And ultimately, it's about making sure that there's a purpose-based solution that can drive real, tangible ROI at the kind of speed and timeframes that are required as the world becomes a lot more digital. If this is of interest to you, and we certainly would love the opportunity to be able to share what we're doing in the journey space and hopefully help solve some of your challenges. We do offer a mechanism to really accelerate and speed up the delivery, and that's in the form of our inQuba Journey Accelerator workshop. It's not a large commitment. It's a 2-hour interactive virtual workshop. What we'll do for you is we'll map your customer journey, we'll look at your customer profiles, we'll look at the nudge opportunities, and we'll start to quantify that ROI. And really what you'll do is you'll get a view in terms of your high-level journey design that obviously would be ideal for an inQuba project, but can be used universally. We would then document all of the components as listed above, and we'll give you a view on the ROI, and the ROI, as I said, is typically quite easy to prove because of the great results that we see over a period of time. We'd love the opportunity to work together with you. We feel that based on the experience that we've got, the focus that we have, that we've got something that is unique. It's quite fun to do. It's all delivered through a software as a service platform that gives you a lot of flexibility, and obviously all backed up with the trust and the rigor that is inherent in the Azure cloud, which ultimately means that all of that technology translates to a real difference in the world of the customer and to a very significant bottom line ROI.
Great, guys. From my side, I see that we are basically at full time. I was going to ask you for some final thoughts and that type of thing, but I think we've all contributed fantastically. This has been a very interesting session. Vlad, thank you so much for your time today. It's been brilliant to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you both.
And yeah, thanks, Trent. And I'd like to just thank our watchers and attendees. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please do reach out to us, like Trent said, if you'd like to take the next step on any of this. But yes, thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.